All right, so I wanted to discuss the current state of the American Athletic Conference. What's been happening with them? What are the latest rumors? And then we've got some other crap to get to. But yeah, this is the big thing right now with the American. They come out and they say they're interested in adding possible Pac-12 schools. You know, it seems like this is kind of a fake attempt. I'm sure they're trying to, but it would be very shocking if Oregon State and Washington State were interested in this. Cal and Stanford, it's just not happening. The only way I can see the American Conference being involved with any four of these teams would be some type of group of five super conference where certain teams from the American Conference would join the Pac-4 and some of the best teams from the Mountain West, although apparently those rumors, which were spearheaded by San Diego State, that's officially been shut down apparently, so that's not happening, and the American makes this half-hearted attempt to go on the offense when in reality, I mean, you gotta really feel bad for the American Conference. I'm just gonna show this kind of, this is the preseason rankings right now of the American. You can see FPI, that's 4 total teams with a positive FPI ranking, everyone else in the negatives, and you can take a look at some of the teams that were added to the conference, Charlotte all the way down there. They had to add 6 different teams because they did lose very good programs, Cincinnati, UCF. It's unfortunate, and they're really just a victim of the conference realignment dominoes, which started all the way back when Texas and Oklahoma went to the SEC. That caused the Big 12 to fill those spots, and here we are today. Something a little interesting also, imagine if the Pac-12 would have eaten the Big 12. I'm guessing Cincinnati and a lot of those schools would still be in the American, at least at this point. The other issue for the American Conference right now, apparently SMU is making a deep push to join the ACC, so far to the point where they've got boosters who are saying, look, we will pay you $200 million for 5 years. They're saying this to SMU. We will pay you to supplement the loss, because if SMU joins the ACC right now, they are not getting much of anything in terms of revenue. And of course, FSU and all those teams are saying, we're already making so little as it is compared to market value. You're not going to dilute us anymore by bringing in SMU. So the idea is SMU is fine with it. Their boosters will pay for it. That's how bad SMU wants to be part of the new Power 4, which was previously the Power 5. So SMU, which you could argue the most powerful program right now in the American, possibly thinking about leaving. This conference is leaking oil. You've got Tulane there as well. They've kind of been thought of as maybe a realignment possibility. Maybe they join a different conference. I don't think so. I know Tulane was really good last year. They won a New Year's Six game, but they haven't been, it's not like they're a stable, great program. Memphis is really interesting. I've kind of pondered and wondered, would Memphis join SMU if the ACC wanted to add 2 more teams? Because I really don't think Stanford and Cal are going to the ACC unless something crazy happens. But would Memphis be that other team? We'll have to see. And you can see UTSA, East Carolina, UAB joins the conference, FAU, North Texas. I mean, it's a watered down conference. You lost 3 of your best teams and you replaced it with 6 worse teams, It's nothing against the conference. I mean, South Florida, they really need South Florida to have a comeback or something with their new stadium, because that is a team, it's really hurting. And then this is the contrast. So this is last year. You could see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 teams above 0 in terms of FPI. And the conference, I mean, UCF is gone, Cincinnati is gone, Houston is gone. That is really, really tough. So right now, when it comes to the American, you can see the new look American right here. Stanford in California, Washington State and Oregon. This is the dream scenario for them, right? It's got to be the dream. That's just not going to happen. I'm sorry. But for the American right now, what is my opinion of them? I think they're probably just treading water. I don't really see an expansion, chance where they're going to add anyone. They're just trying to hold off losing SMU, who is making a real big push to leave for the ACC. A lot of this depends on if the ACC wants SMU, but SMU is putting offers out there to say, we know we're not going to get paid early on when we join. That's fine. Our boosters are going to pay for it. We just want to get into the Power 4. That's what they're saying. So that is the current situation surrounding the American Conference. Then we've got this statement from the Mountain West basically saying that they're united, they're aligned, they're looking around. Your typical realignment jargon, you know, that's basically all that was. Our Yahoo Sports story from Tuesday on the ACC exploring expansion additions, Cal, Stanford, SMU, where we deep dive into the financials. SMU open to forego 5+ years of distribution. Cal, Stanford talking about taking 60 to 70% share. ESPN new money offsetting current member travel increases. So it seems like ESPN is really game. They're really desperate to get more of those West Coast teams to really open up that window. You know, right now you could argue, well, you know, ESPN possibly with the Big 12, you could get some West Coast games with Colorado or Arizona. Number one, I believe the Big 12's TV deal is split. It's not like ESPN has a ton of control over it like they do with the ACC and the SEC. It's very evenly split between ESPN and Fox. So ESPN wouldn't be getting all the rights to all of those West Coast games. They want West Coast games. You know, that's the idea of taking Cal and Stanford. The travel it's going to be brutal because I just don't see any other teams from the West Coast outside of Oregon State and Washington State. And at that point, you're really running out of money there. If you are the ACC, how are you going to make all that work with those 4 teams? Is Oregon State and Washington State going to do the same thing SMU would do, which is forego 5 years of distribution? I don't think they can afford that. So it's still looking very likely like Oregon State and Washington State probably joining the Mountain West. Depending, maybe they're waiting for a life draft from the Big 12, but either way, the situation. SMU, they do make sense to the ACC, especially if they're game to pay early, and then the other team possibly would be Memphis if you're looking to get, you know, an even number of teams into the conference. A new look ACC, and they've got South Florida in this conference. The FSU is gone, Clemson is gone. And you can see California also in this conference, as well as Stanford. Miami is still there. North Carolina is still there. I mean, I just don't see how this works in terms of travel. Personally, also South Florida, you know, they're an enigma. They've got a good TV market. We'll see. California, Stanford, SMU, ACC talks heat up. Big 12 loses interest in Pac-4, and the Mountain West merger stalls. So, yeah, the Big 12... it's not that they lost interest. They were told no by California and Stanford. And yes, I will agree they did lose interest in Oregon State and Washington State, but they could always come back, I feel like, next year and add those 2 teams, depending on what their current situations are. They do need to find a home soon, that is for sure. The ACC's interest in California and Stanford isn't as illogical as it sounds. The ACC's exploration of adding the 2 West Coast schools has more to do with discontent in its own ranks rather than common sense. Yeah, no, I think the ACC is just desperate right now. You know, I came out with a video, I said, it is panic time. They're looking around, they're seeing if we're at a Power 4 now and all the other 3 conferences are adding, and you're not doing anything. Part of that's because you have a terrible TV deal. You know, wasn't there a rumor that they were trying to get Oregon and Washington or something? And there's just no chance with that TV deal when you're going up against the Big 10. That's just not going to happen. This just seems like a ridiculous panic move to me, even if it does make sense in terms of the academics for Stanford, certainly to join the ACC over the Big 12. The travel just does not make sense. I think it's a lot more likely if the ACC tries to expand, you know, in an attempt to survive, or even just say, listen, if it's a Power 4, we're going to at least get to 16 teams like everyone else. You could look at teams like Memphis, teams like SMU. If you wanted to do the West Wing 2.0, you take all the 4 schools from out there remaining, which would be Stanford, Cal. It would be the Pac-4. But I don't know if Washington State and Oregon State would do that because it would be extremely discounted. And I'm not sure if they can support that. I know Oregon State just built a new, massive new renovation on their stadium with more capacity. They're in a lot of debt. They need money. And I'm not sure they would be willing to sacrifice that, but maybe they just want to get into a Power 4 conference. I mean, you do get significant perks by getting into a Power 4 conference, and maybe that's Stanford's motivation as well, but you would think, I mean, it's documented at this point. Even the Big 12 admits, yes, we begged Stanford to join. They said no. And it's looking, this is why I'm saying I think the Big Ten said yes. This is what happened. The Big Ten told Oregon and Washington last year, they admitted to them, they said, look, you're going to be in, wait a year, you'll be in. We have to work it out logistically. It can't look like we destroyed the Pac-12 by ourselves. Let's just do it for legal reasons, whatever, wait a year, come back to us. That's exactly what happened. And then Oregon and Washington join the Big Ten when I had videos talking about the West Wing last July, over a year ago, and then it comes to fruition. And now we're talking about this situation. It just seems like, honestly, lost my train of thought there for a second. It just seems like Stanford is for sure been told by the Big Ten, look, the Big Ten saying, look, you're in. Just wait a year. It's not a big deal. We're trying to get Notre Dame. We're going to lure you. The other thing is, if Stanford somehow joins the ACC, would that lure Notre Dame to the ACC? I don't see how the ACC has the money to afford Notre Dame. Notre Dame would be better off being independent, or at least the money would be close to where there's really no point of giving up being an independent. I think that's why Notre Dame, imagine Stanford goes to the Big Ten. You would have to think at that point, Notre Dame, if they're joining a conference, they're going to the Big Ten for football. You know, there's just no way. I understand the whole thing with ACC. You know, Notre Dame's basketball's ACC, everything else is with that conference. But I don't think the ACC has the money to afford Notre Dame based on their current TV deal. They just don't. The Big Ten does, and the Big Ten's a better fit. But Notre Dame can stay independent. I really don't care. It is what it is. But the Big Ten, if they understand, if it's all about money, and Notre Dame would certainly improve their revenue streams, they know that. So it would be Stanford and Notre Dame to the Big Ten. You would possibly be looking at, I mean, it just depends with the grant of rights what happens to the ACC. I would look at SMU, Memphis, maybe South Florida, maybe another team from the American Conference, and you got to just feel bad for the American Conference, but it seems like the American Conference saw this coming. You know, they lost 3 teams and they added 6, so even if they lose 2 teams, they'll still have a decent number in terms of their total conference. It's just extremely picked over, and I would describe the American Conference right now as watered down, and it's sad, but that's just the reality of it. And it's kind of different because the American, it was like, oh, it's the Power 6, it's the Power 6. UCF goes undefeated. Cincinnati has their run. And now it's looking like the Mountain West is going to be the big winners in all of this by getting Washington State and Oregon State, unless those teams can somehow get a life draft from the Big 12. It's looking like that's where they're headed. Either way, guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you follow me on Twitter. Link to that's always in the description.